Welcome to hiring training developed by the talent acquisition team within Human Resources for both Lancaster County and the city of Lincoln. My name is Laura Lepke. I am the talent acquisition division leader and love my role in getting to support the hiring needs for our organization. I have a wonderful team as well that is available to help navigate the hiring process from an applicant to a candidate to eventually hiring someone as an employee. Let's get started. Here are the objectives we will cover in today's training, from equity in hiring to your talent acquisition specialist. We do have one of our team members assigned to your department specifically. How to submit a requisition, the interview process, and eventually the offer stage. Please do make sure you have the hiring handbook handy. It's an attachment that goes along with this presentation and can also be used as a resource for the whole hiring process. It's a comprehensive guide to each step in the hiring process and how to navigate through those. On page 3 of your hiring handbook, you will see an overview of the recruitment process. The first step would be the requisition. This is how you let us know that you have a hiring need and communicate to our team what your needs are, what you want your posting to look like, and more information regarding the vacancy. We go ahead and post the job either internally first or directly external, and then send the applicants to you to be screened once the position would close. Then you would interview the candidates and eventually find your hire. To page 4 in the hiring handbook, you'll see our mission statement as the talent acquisition team. We do strive to provide an outstanding experience for both you as the hiring manager as well as for our candidates. The reality is that most candidates don't get hired. There is that top one that gets the job, but the majority of candidates are eventually rejected and want to make sure that they're walking away with a good experience that they'll be sharing with their networks. I do like to say that good people know good people. So what are they sharing with their friends, families, colleagues, and professionals within their networks about their experience with the city or county and the interview process? Are they someone that's going to want to apply again in the future? And maybe they weren't a perfect fit for the position that they were currently interviewing for, but down the road they'd be a perfect fit for another vacancy that we would have become available. On the other side of it, we commit as a team to providing you, hiring managers, the tools, resources, templates that you need to navigate the hiring process successfully. It is a very tough candidate market, so we want to make sure that we're doing our part to make it as easy as possible for you to have the interview questions, the interview templates, and all your questions answered as you go through each stage in the interview process. Continuing on page 4 in the hiring handbook, I want to discuss equity in hiring. We are a government entity, so we are under a different lens, and we do have a shared responsibility both within HR and for you as hiring managers to provide all of our citizens a fair and impartial hiring process. So we want to make sure that each applicant is treated equally and that they're all taken through the same interview process. Same documented interview process, just to ensure that there's no favoritism, implicit bias, or disparate impact. All right, so now I want to go over some hiring statistics from LinkedIn. These are national averages for both private and the public sector. Take a guess at how many days the best candidates are on and off the market. The answer would be only 10 days. So we do want to be very quick to follow up with candidates. We've talked a little bit about shortening our posting time frames, and we can discuss that more later in the presentation. But really just being cognizant of the timelines that we're dealing with as we're competing with other employers for the same talent and the best talent. Looking at the next stat here, we have nearly how many in 5 candidates, or what percent, say the overall candidate experience they receive is an indicator of how a company values its people. What's your guess? So nearly 4 in 5 candidates say the overall experience they receive indicates how much a company values its people. So Really do want to set the stage for our new employees. This is the foundational piece of their experience with our organization. So we do want to make sure that they're receiving a great experience and are set up for success coming into their new role. Next one here, what % of job seekers would quit an online application due to the length and complexity? All right, 60% of job seekers do quit online applications midway. And we see this in some of our departments that have a very high level and number of supplemental questions. So we are looking at kind of paring down those supplemental questions and only asking the most necessary ones to make sure that we're not losing top talent because they're busy professionals that don't have time to spend hours filling out a complex application. Last one here, the average length of the hiring process is how many days? 36 days would be the average length. Again, this is a national average for both the private sector and public sector, but 36 days is pretty quick. So we want to, again, be cognizant of this time frame and schedule interviews quickly, follow up with candidates quickly, and keep them warm as well. If there is going to be a lengthier process, just letting them know that up front and just continuing those contacts and check-ins throughout the process to make sure they're still interested and keep them engaged as well. All right, moving on to page 5 in the hiring handbook, you will see information on our talent acquisition team. We are within HR and do support all hiring efforts for both Lancaster County and the city of Lincoln. Barb Boggs is our senior talent acquisition specialist and oversees the departments you'll see there on the screen. She also covers our policy review and works on higher level projects. April Kovar is our talent acquisition and outreach specialist, oversees the following departments and would be the point of contact for those departments. As far as outreach goes, we are active at career fairs, community events, and have been doing some walk-in hiring events as well, where candidates would come, apply, interview on the spot, and potentially walk away with a contingent job offer. So if that's something that your department is interested in, please let April know. Lashara Ways is our talent acquisition and onboarding specialist. She oversees the recruitment efforts for the following departments. She has a couple of the biggest departments that we have in our organization. So she's kept very busy, but does onboarding as well. So would be the point of contact for any onboarding questions. We did take the opportunity in 2023 to develop a city onboarding committee and county onboarding committee with representatives from respective departments to take a step back and really revamp our onboarding and HR orientation program to make sure that we are setting up candidates for success as they're transitioning into a new employee. And then myself, Laura Lepke, I am the Talent Acquisition Division Leader. I work on executive level positions, work for administrative services, human resources, and the mayor's office. And I'm happy to answer questions for any departments. You can also go directly to your talent acquisition specialist. We're all available to help. I have an absolutely wonderful team and truly enjoy working with each one of these ladies. All right, looking at some hiring metrics from talent acquisition. Last year in 2022, you'll see we posted 873 requisitions across the city and county. We had reviewed 12,265 applications from candidates. These are reviewed individually by hand, so we do make sure we look at each one of those applications to confirm the qualifications, that they meet the class spec minimum quals, and also want to make sure that the supplemental questions are answered accurately. So we do audit each of those applications. Of those, we referred about half, so 6,367 candidates were referred to the departments for interviews. And of those, the hiring managers hired 1,251 candidates. All of these numbers are record highs. They've gone up year over year for about the past 5 years. So hiring is becoming more and more of a necessary thing for all of our departments. So I want to make sure that we're looking at our processes and doing it in the most efficient, effective, and positive way. All right, on page 6 of the hiring handbook, you will see information on our position classifications. There is a example copy of a class spec, classification, however you want to word it, on page 6. But these are more of a general description of the position. So these can be shared across multiple departments. For example, an office specialist in one department could look very different than an office specialist in another. So very generic descriptions of the positions. Every classified position has one of these. And it is best practice to review the classification for the role before submitting a requisition and having us fill a vacancy. So if there's anything you see that needs to be changed, or maybe you have a newly budgeted position that does not have a classification yet, please work with our classification and compensation team within HR to work through that class spec and make sure you have one that aligns well with the position and your hiring needs. On page 7 of the hiring handbook, you will see an example of our employee position descriptions, or more commonly referred to as EPDs. So these are very specific to each position. Every position, classified position, has one of these, and I like to say it's the roadmap for the employee and what's expected of them. So we want to make sure that these are reviewed at least every 3 years for accuracy, just because these are what our performance reviews are based on and how we're rated for our merit increases on an annual basis. So again, we like to have these reviewed every 3 years, and when you go to submit a requisition for us to fill a vacancy, you submit the EPD for the position with the requisition. And that's what we use to make sure it's aligning with the classification page. The biggest difference between the classification page and the EPD would be that the class specs are more general for multiple individuals in a position, whereas the EPD is specific to you, your position, and what's expected of you. NeoGov is our applicant tracking system. So this is where we track all the applications that come in, refer them over to you, the hiring manager at each department, and give you access to see all of the candidates. So when we enable your access, this is the email that you would see in your inbox. But if you ever have questions about access or need us to reset a password or give another individual in your department access, please let us know. We can easily add that for any individual within the department that would need that. Moving to the process of submitting a requisition. So some departments structure this process by having their HR clerk submit all requisitions for each hiring manager. Some have every single hiring manager signed up in NeoGov, and they go in and do it each time they would have a hiring need. So it's really specific to your department and how you want to structure that. But as far as the process of submitting a requisition, you would go into your NeoGov dashboard and hit the little plus here in the top right corner. Next, you would fill out the required fields and provide any other information as well that would be necessary for us to know as we're working to fill your vacancies. So the class spec, again, the classification page for the role, our class and comp team does review these to make sure that the EPD aligns with the class spec. So make sure that you reviewed that in advance and that everything lines up. Indicating your department, the working title you'd like to use, we would post the position under the working title. So if there's a title that more accurately describes what the position does and is more specific, you can most definitely use a working title that makes more sense for you and the role. Hiring manager, you can put multiple people on this. It's really who's going to be receiving the referrals once we review the applications and send them over to the department. Who all do you want to be seeing those applications? Job type, we have full-time, probationary, or status in the example here, but another example of that would be a part-time, temporary, or other type of position. But I would say full-time, probationary would be the most common. List type, we have regular in the example, but say you have the position just open to internal applicants, we would put promotional here. Some of our union contracts do require that we post the position internally before going external as a regular list type. And some departments just prefer to post it internally, especially if they have someone in mind that would be a good fit for the role. Number of vacancies, just let us know how many of that position you are hiring for. Top left corner here, we have actually a new field to the requisition page. So letting us know how long you want the position open. Historically, we've done 2 weeks would be the standard posting time frame, but looking at those stats from LinkedIn and the national averages for how long candidates are on the market, we want to give you the flexibility to shorten that time frame and take it down to a week if that's something that would make sense for the volume of applicants that you are anticipating. If you have a posting that's a seasonal or going to be open continuously, please indicate other and we'll follow up with you. My team member will follow up with you to get some more information on that and make sure we're posting it for the length of time that's most appropriate for that position. The bargaining group union, that's self-explanatory there. The person that's being replaced, we just want to make sure that we have that on record, why they had left, and then how many hours per week this position will be working, and then the general work hours for that role. Driver's license and CDL requirements would be on the classification page. So if it's indicated on the class page that they need a driver's license or need a CDL, make sure you're indicating that here. And then attaching the EPD that again has been reviewed at least within the last 3 years to make sure that all those duties still align with what that position does on a day-to-day basis. Indicating if it's a new position or not. This is helpful for finance just when they're looking at newly budgeted roles to make sure that they are aligning with what's currently budgeted or would be newly budgeted. And down in the comments section, we really want to make sure we're highlighting this as an option because this is where you would indicate any other helpful information that you want us to know going into filling your vacancy. So you're not limited to any certain number of qualified candidates. The one thing we will always make sure we're doing in talent acquisition is confirming that anyone that's referred to you meets the minimum qualifications on the classification page. But as far as how many candidates you want that to be, you can truly interview as many candidates as you'd like. So all candidates go through the same interview process, but if you want that to be the top 5, 7, 9, 12, 15, 20 candidates, it's really up to you and what your preference is. We know sometimes those more qualified candidates will fall lower in the list. So if you want to see more of that list, you have the flexibility to do that. Just let us know how many you want to consider, and we'll go ahead and refer that many. If, for instance, you say you want to refer everyone that, or consider everyone that meets minimum qualifications, we could get a very large number of those. So say you indicate you want to see all of them and we get 60 plus that come in, we'd reach out to you and say, hey, you got over 60 that meet the minimum qualifications. Do you truly want to interview each of those, or would you like to cut that down and just start with the top 10 or another number that would make sense for you? So. On page 10 of the hiring handbook, you will see the next steps after you created the requisition. So go ahead and create and then save and continue to next step. All right, looking at the approvals, some departments use this, some don't. It's really up to you and your internal processes, but you might want your department head or someone that would be at a higher level to approve the requisition before it goes through. So if that's part of your internal process, this is where you can add an approver to look over the requisition, give them that thumbs up, and then would come through to us in talent acquisition. This is not something that is required though. So if you do not have anyone that's required in the approval process, you can just ignore this step. Attachments here are where you include your employee position description, also any supplemental questions that you'd like to add. Maybe you want us to pull the questions that have been asked the last time this position was posted and edit those before submitting a new requisition. You can always request that from your talent acquisition specialist. Also, the posting language that you'd like, the only requirement that we have for the posting is that we list the minimum qualifications on the classification page. So beyond that, we encourage you to write your own posting that attracts and welcomes people to apply to the application. And then any other information that would be helpful as far as interview questions or position information that you want to include is always welcome. Supplemental questions. So moving on to page 11 in your hiring handbook. These are what we use to confirm the minimum qualifications on the classification page and any other information, preferred qualifications or experience with a certain software or tool or something that you would regularly use on this job. Want to make sure that we're asking questions in the application stage to ensure that they're able to meet those true things that you need and desire for a candidate to be successful in this role. So it does help you learn about this experience early on, saves you time in interviews, and all candidates are asked the same questions, so they're compared equally. I would say about 10 to 15 would be the sweet spot for how many supplemental questions you want to include. Generally, if it's over that 15 mark or even 20, then it gets a little extensive for the candidate to complete, and it results in candidates dropping off from the application process. On page 13 in the hiring handbook, you'll find some information on position postings. So after you've submitted your requisition, the next step will be for my team to send your requisition through the hiring review committee process. This is an internal process, so not something you need to worry about at the department level, but we do send it to our classification and compensation team within HR. They look at it to make sure the employee position description aligns with the classification page and that you're hiring for what the position is classified to do. And then for all city requisitions, we do also send those to the finance department to make sure that it aligns with the budget and that the position has the funds to support it. All requisitions that are received before 5 p.m. on Friday are processed and posted the following week. So submitted on Friday, we early Monday morning send it off and start the hiring review committee process. We usually get all those approvals through by Tuesday evening, latest would be Wednesday morning. And then we have Wednesday and Thursday to work on the posting. We work with you on that to make sure that the position's ready to go live that Friday night, Saturday morning at midnight, however you want to look at that. But again, looking at attraction-based job postings, want to make sure that the postings that we're crafting for you and with you make sense for the role and are welcoming and make the employee want to apply rather than a laundry list of things that they need to have or we don't want them. We want to be warm and inviting and welcome applicants to each of our roles. Looking at our standard interview process, so historically this has been the process we've followed. Internal positions are posted for about 6 days if it is required to go internal first or if the department wants to go internal first. And then external positions would be posted for 2 weeks. We would just carry over the same supplemental questions that were used previously to rank your candidates and refer the top 5 or 10 candidates after the position closes. This is not something that we need to adhere to. So maybe seeing the top 5 works well for you and you want to keep abiding by that. By all means, can keep going that route. But if you want to change things up, you now have the flexibility to do that. So looking at switching up the interview process, historically we have treated every position the same and done kind of a one-size-fits-all when we really can't treat a frontline worker's position the same as an executive level role. They are very different. So we want to interview candidates differently and treat each position uniquely as they should be. So again, as a government entity, we do share the responsibility with you as a hiring manager to ensure we're carrying out fair hiring practices. So any candidate who is referred goes through the same interview process. That truly can look however you'd like. So if that first step is a quick pre-screening call and then you kind of narrow down those top candidates you want to bring in for a formal interview, we have lots of options of how that interview process can look. But I do want to make sure everyone's going through the same documented interview process. I think this quote from the Journal of Occupational Psychology speaks well to just taking a step back and structuring your interviews before beginning the interview process to make sure that you're doing it right the first time and have an interview process that makes sense for your position. If you ever have questions on how to structure your interview process, please reach out to our talent acquisition team. We do this every day. We see various different types of processes and structures across our organization, and we'd love to give you some ideas and help you structure a process that makes most sense for your hiring needs. Here are some general recommendations we'd like to share just based off of our experience and what we've seen work really well for various departments across the organization. So because you can see as many candidates as you'd like for each position, that could be a very large number of applicants who meet minimum qualifications. So if you're saying you want to see everyone, or even a very large number of candidates, we advise screening those candidates by adding in more supplemental questions, and even adding in a quick screening step as the first step in your interview process. That can be very helpful to pare down those necessary and desired qualifications before coming to those formal interview steps, and then shortening the time frame that your position is posted. Again, it's a very tight candidate market, and we want to make sure that the time frame for the posting makes sense for the time frame that you need to hire the individual. All right, interview options. So if you'll look at page 15 in the hiring handbook, you'll see what I like to call kind of an a la carte menu for different options that you can pick and choose from for your interviews. The Korn Ferry interview questions are something new that my team's been working on and working with departments on. This is something you're interested in. You basically would pick the top competencies or soft skills the position would require and select interview questions based on those. These are more behavioral-based interview questions, not as technical, and really help you evaluate the individual for those leadership skills and soft skills that you wouldn't see on a resume. Other interview question banks we have available as well. If you want to see just a large list of questions that have been asked for similar positions, we have lots of resources there if you're interested. Speaking to the difference between a phone screening and a phone or virtual interview, a phone screening would be usually about 10 to 15 minutes and a great way to quickly confirm qualifications that weren't asked in the application, confirming shift availability, compensation requirements, the ability to reliably commute on a daily basis, whatever those things are that you need to confirm before being sure you want to move forward with a formal interview. It's a great time to do that. The phone and virtual interviews are great for those who are working professionals and aren't available to come in as quickly for an in-person interview, or if you have someone that's applying that is not residing locally, this is a great option. And then the formal in-person interviews are usually with a panel of minimum of 2 to 3 individuals would be the bare minimum we recommend, but just having a diverse panel is something that we want to make sure that those interview panels have to get a variety of perspectives as well, and we'll talk a little bit more about that soon. So again, diversifying your interview panels to include a range of human differences really does help in just combating favoritism or implicit bias. We want to make sure that we're including a range of individuals that can provide different perspectives on the potential hires. So one thing that we've been doing a lot within HR that's worked very well is bringing in individuals from other departments that won't be working with this individual every day, but offer an outside perspective that allows us to just give an external lens on the candidates that we're interviewing. Also would recommend bringing in subject matter experts, either within the organization or someone that's outside of the county or city that would be an expert in that space that can give good insight on the technical side of the interview questions and how that candidate compares to what the position would entail. Want to make sure we're just really looking at the panels that we have and including a range of human differences. So diversifying our interview panels is a great way to combat both implicit bias and disparate impact. Implicit bias would be an unconscious favoritism towards a certain group of people, their actions or perceptions. And then disparate impact would be an action or hiring decision that seems neutral but actually does negatively impact a specific protected class member. So a great example of this would be looking at the demographic information and EEO data for our applications versus the same data for those who are hired. There are large differences there, so we want to make sure we're combating that with diverse interview panels. Something we're doing within our talent acquisition team is reaching out and partnering with community organizations that can provide information on our jobs and provide accessibility to our applications to their networks, and really expanding our reach to diverse populations and making our applications more accessible. Moving on to page 16 in the hiring handbook, we're going to discuss interview documentation. This is the pillar of our ability to ensure a fair and impartial hiring process. And then within HR, we do keep these on record for 4 years. A candidate does have the authority to come back and grieve a hiring decision up to 2 years after the hiring decision has been made. So we make sure to keep that documentation from the department on their interview process, interview notes, just to make sure that we can defend your hiring decision. We want to protect you and make sure that we can speak to why you hired who you did, should a candidate come to us and grieve the decision. So please return your interview documentation to your talent acquisition specialist at the conclusion of all your interviews, and we'll make sure we keep that on file for you for up to 4 years. All right, numerical scoring. So thinking about our interview documentation, you'll see an example of a template here on the screen that we like to use. It's also listed a little bit larger on page 17 of the handbook. And down at the bottom, you will see very faint 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to numerically rate the candidates. But this is something that we encourage to quickly and easily defend the hiring decision that was made. So numerical scoring is a great way to even remember back if you have very spaced out interviews and don't really recall how well that first individual had interviewed. This is a very clear-cut way to define the best candidates and in theory be able to hire the one with the highest score. Do want to mention the instance that could come up where you don't want to hire the individual that scored the highest in the interview process. By no means do you have to or are required to hire the candidate who scored the highest. There could be various numbers of reasons that that top candidate is truly not the best candidate for the role. So as long as you're able to document why you decided to move forward with the second or third scoring candidate, we just want to make sure that's on file, and then we can easily defend why that decision was made. And kind of a rule of thumb that we like to share with departments is just your ability to defend on the stand. Worst case scenario, it turns into a grievance and maybe even a lawsuit for the hiring decision, and all these notes are opened up. We want to make sure that we're able to defend on the stand why the hiring decision was made. So as long as we're documenting that, that would be all we want to include. So again, speaking to numerical scoring helps us ensure a fair and impartial process, and also defends a hiring decision for candidates and why they were selected. We do want to share some examples of interview notes that we have seen that we want to stay away from. These are all real notes that we have seen previously from interview panelists. So rule of thumb, if you wouldn't feel comfortable with that candidate reading your notes, one day if everything's opened up and is read in a courtroom, what would you want that person reading that you wrote about them? So really just want to record what that person had said in the interview to help you remember for later in discussing the hiring decision. If the person is yammering on and on, a better way to indicate that would be that they are not answering the question and talking about anything but the question that was asked of them in the interview, keeping things appropriate, not making any derogatory comments about the individual or their appearance, wearing a low-cut blue dress. Maybe they're dressed inappropriately for the interview, and if you need to indicate that, then write that they're dressed inappropriately rather than any specifics on their appearance. This is an attractive candidate. It was something that was said in an interview, nothing to do with the physical appearance of the interviewee, but something that the interviewee took personally. It was actually regarding her qualifications being attractive, but just want to make sure we're mindful of what's being said and how it could be perceived. I'm falling asleep or what? I want to make sure that we're just keeping our notes professional and again, recording what that individual had said in the interview. I know a question comes up about, what if the candidate themselves says something very inappropriate or something that you don't want to hire them after saying, then always use those quotations in the interview notes to indicate that they had said this inappropriate comment, and that would be a good reason to not hire them. So if you ever have questions on this, feel free to reach out to our team as well. We'd love to answer any of those. Veterans preference does apply to all parts of the interview process that include numerical scoring. So we do apply this in the application process. If there's someone that's tied for, say, number 10, number 11 spots, and you want to just see the top 10, we would refer on the veteran over the other individual who was tied for that spot. It can also be used as a tiebreaker at the end of the interview process. If you have two candidates who are equally qualified, the veteran would be the individual who would be hired for the role. And then they do receive a 5-point or 5% advantage on every part of the interview process that has numerical scoring. So even in the interview notes and interview process, if you have numerical scoring, that 5% or 5-point advantage would be added for any veterans. And my team will let you know if you have veterans in your candidate pool when we refer them on to you. For disabled veterans or the spouse of a disabled veteran, they do receive a 10-point or 10% advantage on all parts or phases of a interview process. Repeat applicants. This is language that is stipulated in both the Lincoln Municipal Code and the county personnel rules that if you have a candidate who has interviewed 3 times and been rejected 3 times, let us know you're not interested in them and we can disqualify them. We're going to assume that you want to keep interviewing them because maybe that 4th time is the 4th time's a charm and you want to interview them after that point. But if it's someone you're not interested in, you would only have to interview them the 3 times, and then we can reject them from applying from your positions in the 2 years from that date. This does apply to both internal and external candidates. And I know there's a lot of questions around, well, is this just specific to our one position? Is it department-wide or is it organization-wide? We're going to leave that up to you at the department level. So if you within one department have someone that's interviewed multiple times for one position and then suddenly applies for one in a different division, but within the same department, we can let that new division know, hey, they've been rejected 3 times by this other division in your department. Would you like to interview them, or is this not someone you're interested in? So we'll work with you on that. Just want to give you guys the flexibility and knowledge that 3 times would be the maximum number that you would have to interview a repeat applicant. On page 19 of the handbook, you will find information on rejecting candidates. So we go ahead and notify any candidates who applied and were not referred to you that they have not been selected for the position. So we do let them know if they're not in the top group, but we're qualified that the department's interviewing the top group right now, but it is still an open position and we could reach out to you again. So we don't fully close those individuals down in case you want to go to that next group. But for anyone that doesn't meet minimum qualifications, we would just go ahead and close them down right away. And then it's your responsibility to notify candidates who you had interviewed and not selected. This being the case just because you know when they had interviewed and why they were not selected. So we'll go ahead and let you communicate that to them directly. We do have the ability to sponsor non-resident aliens on both the county and city side. So at the department level, you would decide to move forward with sponsoring a non-resident alien, and then those legal fees would be billed back to you at the department level. So those fees can run anywhere from about $2,000 to $7,000 annually, just depending on the visa type. But hiring is very tight right now, so we want to make it as easy as possible to bring on the individuals that you need for these roles. So if there's someone that you're willing to sponsor and you need them for a position, let us know. I can answer any questions. I am the point of contact for all of our non-resident alien employees. Please let me know what questions you have. I'm happy to work with you and the department on those. The big thing with their I-9s is that box 4 would be checked. So that's something that our operations team looks for when they're processing and looking at those I-9s. And they do let payroll know of those individuals that check box 4, just so the withholding differentials are applied. There's a lot of changes with their Medicare and FICA. So they apply those withholdings correctly for the visa type of each employee. All right, background checks. So you've found the individual you want to hire. By no means do you have to wait for the background check to come back to make them a contingent offer. So both verbal offers and our offer letters have a contingency clause where you extend the offer contingent on their background check coming back satisfactory, and then you can go ahead and get the offer, hopefully get that acceptance right away so that you don't have to wait for the full time frame in getting this background check back before confirming that acceptance. So again, this is to make it easier to hire someone in a timely manner and help us compete with other companies who are making offers very quickly. We've made it to the offer stage. So the first step in the offer stage would be completing an electronic hire request. We'll go over that on the next slide. This is a new form that we've developed on the internet that allows you to complete an electronic request for us to draft your offer letter that we would extend back to you to make the offer to the candidate. Here is our new electronic hire request. This can be found on the intranet and is a quick way for you to let our talent acquisition team know that you would like to request an offer letter for your candidate. Offer letters are very crucial. It's a contractual agreement between us as an employer and the employee to ensure that they're aware of the full benefits they're stepping into and what they're signing up for. We have created templates that stipulate the different benefits for each representation group, position, and employee. So I want to make sure we get those over to you for each hire that's being made. And one thing that we have included in this step is the hire above minimum request. So if you have the need to hire someone above minimum, indicate yes in the field on the kind of middle right there, and then that bottom justification box will pop up. One thing we want to make sure is that you're still obtaining approval from your department head for the hiring above minimum request. So please indicate in your justification that, per email on said date, I've obtained approval from my department head to request this above minimum, and then provide any information that would justify why that person would require a hire above that first step in the pay plan. And then we'll get that over to the class and comp team for you for their comp analysis, and also CC in the department head as well at that time to make sure they're kept in the loop with the process on our end. So any questions on this, please feel free to reach out to your talent acquisition specialist. All offer letters coming from HR is a new step in the hiring process. So we want to make sure we're being a strong resource for you in this area and are happy to answer any questions related to this. All right, onboarding. So in 2023, we did take a step back and formed committees with both the county and city to look at our orientation and onboarding process and really revamp it to include those pre-boarding steps that HR clerks would go through every time a new hire is brought on, revamping the HR orientation that is live with HR every other week for new employees. Just to make sure we're setting them up for success and providing them the information that every new employee in our organization will need. And then those post-boarding and ongoing support items that are provided to supervisors to ensure that they're checking in with their new employee and setting them up for success and continuing that success through those first few months and even half year. All right, when you need us, please do not hesitate to reach out to our all HR inbox at hr@lincoln.ne.gov or our phone number here that rings to all of HR. You can select our talent acquisition extension, or always feel free to reach out to your talent acquisition specialist first to get clarification on any part in the hiring process. I myself, Laura Lepke, am also readily available for any questions you would have related to hiring, onboarding, the offer stage. There's a lot that goes into bringing someone on as a new employee, and we're happy to be a resource for you and help you when you need us. We've gone over a lot of information today, so any questions, please do feel free to reach out to your talent acquisition specialist or myself at llepky@lincoln.ne.gov. That is LLEPPKY@lincoln.ne.gov. I'm happy to follow up with you, meet with you, and answer any questions you would have on this. You can also refer to the hiring handbook to get a comprehensive overview of every step in the hiring process for more information and to reference. That's going to be continually updated on the intranet and available to any departments that would have questions. We're excited for you guys in this next stage going into hiring. It's a tough market, but there's also a lot of opportunity to find the best talent and bring on individuals that will help the success and continued growth of our organization. It truly is an honor to be your talent acquisition team and help you with every step in hiring. So thank you so much for joining me today. Any questions, please follow up with myself or your talent acquisition specialist, and hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.